There was a photo taken at a funeral in New York City, in the Bronx. And the photo was taken, I think, probably in the middle of last week. And it was a funeral for one of the New York City police officers who was among those killed in the shooting last Monday, Park Avenue. Remember the story? This funeral was for an officer named Jidarul Islam. He was a 36-year-old who was awarded a posthumous promotion, and he was Muslim. His funeral was held at his home mosque in the Bronx with separate viewings, as is the Muslim tradition, separate viewings for women and men. And before entering the mosque for this very sad ceremony, women put on headscarves in accordance with Muslim religious tradition. And many of the men, also part of the tradition, wore skull caps, although it is not a requirement for the men. Among those who attended the funeral and donned a headscarf as tradition and religious belief system by the Muslims ordained was the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. And a photo taken of her with a headscarf on started circulating among social media. And an anonymous, of course, these coward little fuckers, an anonymous social media poster put underneath the photo, "What the fuck is the governor of New York wearing a hijab?" Yeah. And Ted Cruz, the slimy little son of a bitch from Texas, who is from a family, including himself, of religious, Christian, screaming, goddamn crazy people who talk in tongues and dance on the stage and wave their hands in the air. And this is supposed to be in recognition of their love for the rabbi from Nazareth, Jesus Christ, who no longer exists except in mythology. If he ever did exist, it's now Donald Christ. But Ted Cruz, being the insane, filthy, goddamn Pentecostal freak that he is, will not miss a chance to display his total contempt and disgust for his own Messiah. And this is the way Ted Cruz did it. He reposted the comment that said, "What the fuck is Governor Hochul wearing a hijab?" So Cruz reposted that, and underneath it he wrote, what? And he spelled what? W-T. Yeah, that's the evangelical Pentecostal scream fuck, Ted Cruz, who also happens to be a senator from the benighted state of Texas. What? Jesus Christ. And Cruz's comments had to do with a photo taken Thursday. And Governor Hochul was sitting on a folding chair inside a mosque next to the mayor of New York, the House Negro, Eric Adams. And in the photo, to Governor Hochul's left, men in kurtas and police uniforms kneel on a carpeted floor. Governor Hochul wears a dark pantsuit. And according to the photo, you can take a look at it if you want, she has a somber expression on her face. And on her head, a black scarf looped over her hair. And this just pierced the anus of Ted Cruz. I mean, it was like a sharp stick going right up his ass when he saw that picture. Oh, my God! What? What is wrong with these people, these Christian crazy son of a bitches. What is wrong with them? I have to admit that I am rather relieved that my grandmother, who was a devout Christian fundamentalist, is long dead. She died probably 70 years ago, 65 years ago. I was still in high school. But she was a Christian, and she believed the mythologies and stories that she found in her Bible, her well-worn Bible. But she never, to my knowledge, and I spent every summer with her as a kid, clear up until the time she died. And other times with her too. But her brand of Christianity, while fundamentalist in definition, fundamentalist in nature, she believed in the supposed teachings, especially from the Sermon on the Mount, of her Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I never heard my grandmother use the kind of filthy, rotten language that the Christians use against Jews and Muslims and Hindus and anybody else that gets in their gun sights. I never heard that. And that's the only way that I accept the fact that my grandmother, who had a profound effect on the way I remained sane as a child, because my home life was not one that I would recommend for anyone. But over the years, I learned to respect her religious beliefs. And, when I've spent summers with her, she took me along for the different church meetings and prayer meetings, she and my grandfather. He was not as much of an advocate of Christianity, Protestant Christianity, as she was. But anyway, I digress, and I apologize. But when I compare the kind of Christianity I was exposed to as a child, the kind that was designed to get inside my head and, induce a certain little tidal wave, if that's not contradiction, of fear that if I didn't accept everything that Grandma told me and what I learned in vacation Bible school and going to church every Sunday and Sunday school, if I didn't accept it, I was exposed to the theory that I would burn in hell. Well, I don't know. There was something about my 8, 9, 10, 12, 13-year-old mind that said, fuck that. That's crazy shit. That's like Peter Pan or Alice in Wonderland. It's a fairy story. Don't believe it, Mike. And for some reason I didn't. It never really sunk into me that there was a huge lake of fire waiting for me. But if such a thing did exist, people like Ted Cruz would be right in the middle of it, burning his ass for all of eternity. What a miserable bastard some of these Pentecostal Christians really are. I shouldn't say some, all of them, because all of them are exclusive in what they believe. They tell Jews and Muslims and atheists and agnostics and liberals and gay folk and trans folk, you're all going to hell. Yeah, nice, huh? So Governor Hochul responded to Ted Cruz's post over the weekend. She said that for her, wearing a head covering was a simple matter of honoring the fallen officer. Kathy Hochul is not a Muslim. But as a show of respect, I would do the same thing. I am a full-blown, fire-breathing atheist, but if I were invited to participate in a funeral for a Jewish friend or a Muslim friend, and I have both, or a Christian friend, I would adopt whatever was necessary to be not offensive as I attended those kinds of ceremonies. And I've done it before. I mean, I have done that. I've attended 2 bris events, if you want to know, which was a little bit squeamish for me, but I was invited. And, I recognize the origin of circumcision from the biblical accounts of Abraham, who heard voices that told him to whack off part of his penis. Okay. I'm not going to argue with it if that's a tradition in the Jewish system of traditions. Okay. All right with me. But anyway, Kathy Hochul, after getting the slam from this pig in Texas, this Pentecostal filth, Ted Cruz, she wrote on X, quote, respecting a grieving family's faith is what leaders and anyone with basic decency would do, end quote. And, of course, Ted Cruz doesn't know basic decency any more than he knows that his religion is horseshit. So, anyway, Detective Islam was eulogized at this ceremony for his commitment to his faith, to his family, and to the police department in New York. He is from Bangladesh, came to this country 16 years ago, became part of a growing group of Bangladeshi officers in the New York City Police Department. I wonder if the toilet rat knows that. Because if he does, the toilet rat will now tell Puffy Lips, this crazy bitch Christy Nome, and the monster Tom Homan to focus on the Bangladeshi population of the New York City Police Department because, you know, they're not white. And they have this crazy religion, right? Anyway, Officer Islam had been working an extra shift. This is so often the story, isn't it? He didn't even have to be in this building on Park Avenue, but he was working an extra shift, providing security on the day of the attack. And that shooting was the deadliest single shooting in more than 20 years in New York. So when you hear this filthy pig Donald Trump talk about crime is out of control, once he left New York, the crime rate dropped by about 80%. But during the funeral, the police commissioner, one Jessica Tisch, addressed the people who were mourning from the lectern, and her hair also covered by a black headscarf. And outside the building, more than 100 women, most of them uniformed police officers, waited to be admitted for the viewing, and all of them wore headscarves. But this filthy little Pentecostal, screaming, farting, snake-handling, tongue-talking asshole Ted Cruz decided to stir up his white Christian followers back in Texas by focusing on the governor of New York. One thing about these Christian devils, they absolutely know where to aim their poisonous darts to get the most publicity, don't they? In a statement on Saturday, the Council of American Islamic Relations, CAIR, C-A-I-R, CAIR, called on Senator Cruz to apologize to Mr. Hochul. Oh, come on. And to the family of Detective Islam. And the leader of CAIR described Cruz's post as, quote, despicable and disrespectful, end quote. Well, of course. But Ted Cruz himself is walking despicableness and disrespect. That is what Ted Cruz is comprised of. Not bone and muscle and blood and skin and hair and an ugly face. No. He's composed of despicableness and disrespect, as are all of these white Pentecostal screaming anti-Semites, anti-Muslim, anti-Hindu, anti-everything, except their twisted little jumping and hopping bullshit belief in they must keep hopping and jumping or they're going to burn in hell. Jesus Christ. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical Talk Radio Network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.